It seems like every couple of days, another one of these Republicans has no chance of actually winning the primary, let alone becoming president, announces a presidential campaign. Senator Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina, announced early Wednesday that he is launching a 2024 presidential exploratory committee, making him one of the highest profile Republicans to potentially challenge former President Trump for the GOP nomination. I know America is a land of opportunity, not a land of oppression. I know it because I lived it, Scott said in his announcement video. That's why it pains my soul to see the Biden liberals attacking every rung of the ladder that helped me climb. If the radical left gets their way, millions more families will be trapped in failing schools, crime ridden neighborhoods, and crushing inflation. Not on my watch. This is personal to me. I will never back down in defense of the conservative values that make America exceptional, he added. And that's why I'm announcing my exploratory committee for President of the United States. Scott's launch comes as he prepares to visit early primary states like Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina this week. An exploratory committee allows the senator to raise money for a presidential campaign, including covering the cost for polling and travel before he makes a final decision. Scott did not mention Trump in his announcement video, but instead rallied against President Biden and the Democrats. He said that his life disproves their lies, referring to Biden and the Democratic Party. Today, our country is once again being treated, once again are being tested. Once again, our divisions run deep, and the threat to our future is real, he said. Joe Biden and the radical left have chosen a culture of grievances over greatness. They're promoting victimhood instead of personal responsibility. And they're indoctrinating our children to believe we live in an evil country. See, I was raised by a single mother in poverty. The spoons in our apartment were plastic, not silver. But we had faith. We put in the work, and we had an unwavering belief that we too could live the American dream, he added. A handful of Republican senators told The Hill last week that they talked to Scott about his potential run for president, with many of them indicating they hoped he would run and that he would make a top level candidate. Senators John Thune, Mike Rounds, and John Cornyn all said they have directly encouraged the South Carolina senator to throw his hat in the ring, while Senator Kevin Cramer and Shelley Moore Capito said they spoke with him in private about a potential run. Most recent polls have Trump leading the Republican field, indicating, including official and potential 2024 GOP candidates, with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis following him in second place. The only Republican to launch formal challenges to Trump and our former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, and this other person who I still can't pronounce the name of, that Vivek person. Scott trailed other Republicans with 7% support among registered Republican South Carolina voters in a poll released early Wednesday. By comparison, Trump had 41% support in the Winthrop University survey, while DeSantis and Haley had 20% and 18% respectively. The poll has a margin of error of 4.45 percentage points. That's really sad that he can't even do well in his own state. Like, oh, he got 7% in the South Carolina poll. Oh, great. How much is Trump at? 41? Oh, not bad. He's only less than 25. He only has to get a 75 plus percent increase of, of what Trump has. Um, I guess we'll go over a little bit of his remarks, and then we'll kind of start to talk about why his campaign is dead on arrival, since I'm not going to sit here and kid anybody. This will probably be the only video I make on him for the entire time he runs for president, unless he says something really insane that gets a lot of coverage. This will be his one. He will go the way of Asa Hutchinson, where I'll make one video when they announce, and that'll pretty much be it. So when he says, our division runs deep and the threat to our future is real, and the Biden and the radical left have chosen a culture of grievance over greatness. Again, all platitudes, all stuff that means nothing. They're promoting victimhood instead of personal responsibility. Now, see, that's coded language to tell you that when he gets in there, he's going to have tax cuts for the rich. He's going to try to cut Social Security, Medicare, pretty much anything that actually helps people that's related to the government, because he's another one of these austerity politicians that thinks anyone who has a problem with something just can solve it by taking responsibility. So if you go to college and take all the classes and courses but can't go the next year because it costs too damn much to get one of these little lousy pieces of paper, he'll tell you that you didn't take personal responsibility when when a degree cost an amount of money that you never have had and never would have had. Um, Same person. I mean, like this is just what they do. They preach all these terms that don't mean anything, and then the few times where they get a little bit more specific, they start to basically make it the fault of the voter. Oh, you like Biden and the Democrats because you don't want to take responsibility. It's like, for what? A lot of people work 40 hours a week and they still can't afford a place to live. Oh, but they're just not working hard enough, right? So this is that's the kind of stuff that just annoys me. And then he has the nerve to throw in his personal story. When I lived with my mother, we had plastic spoons. What the hell does that have to do with any position of yours? Like, that's why I said, so covering these people to me just feels like a waste of time, because this isn't like the 2020 Democratic primary where you had interesting characters like Sanders and Gabbard and Warren and Yang and Gravel. Just these people who, even if they weren't your first choice, there was still some position they had that was kind of enticing because the other ones weren't talking about it. Over with the Republican primary, it is, or should I say the Trump party primary, it's a bunch of people who pretty much agree with each other on everything. So because they can't have a substantive policy disagreement conversation the way that a lot of times we would see in primaries of the past, they're just going to go around and tell you about themselves and have all this rhetoric about how evil and awful the Democrats are. And where he says that they try to tell you that indoctrinate kids that the country is evil. I mean, what that point is more annoying than any other part of the stuff I read, because this is a guy who, for the last 5 years, and arguably even longer than that, has played supporter to someone, referring to Trump, who was elected in 2016 on the premise that America was no longer great. You need to improve it. We're an embarrassment, etc., etc. So was he indoctrinating kids by telling us that America was inferior? Like, basically, it's this thing I don't like, where when Republicans criticize the U.S., usually when a Democrat's in charge, it's them being patriotic, it's constructive, etc. When you're on the left and you criticize America for anything that it's ever done in its whole history, including now or the past, you're told that you hate the country and you're trying to indoctrinate people. Like, you're just telling the truth about the things that have happened in the U.S. The U.S. had slavery. The U.S. treated Native Americans like trash. The U.S. interned Japanese for no reason other than their ethnicity. So, how is admitting what has happened and the ways in which people have been discriminated against somehow indicative that we think the U.S. is evil? Because we're the same ones who will tell you there's a lot of things in the U.S. that we like. So, just a really strange analysis by him. But let me also just kind of give you the spoiler alert on this dead on arrival, because he hasn't officially declared, but if he does, I'm not going to make a video, because this is already like enough of an indication that he's probably going to. Every single Republican primary since, I'd say, 96 or 2000, I guess, there's been this thing where, and it's starting to be this way with women, starting with like 2012, where every single primary there's a black guy who runs, and he generally has positions that are fairly identical to the rest of the party. But because most Republican voters are white, and I'm just gonna say this, they're not known in recent times for being that accepting. Like, yeah, they'll talk about Party of Lincoln, but they're not known in recent times for being that accepting of minorities. Uh, that person will, have some, maybe some memorable debate moments. Maybe they'll get like a few thousand votes, but they won't win any states, and they will, after being defeated, effectively disappear. This happened to Alan Keyes in 2000. This happened to um, what I'm forgetting his name. He passed away. Herman Cain in 2012. This effectively has happened to Ben Carson in 2016. All these different black guys run, with their not so different ideas from the rest of the parts. You would think, hey, they're like suitable choices in case you don't like someone else, and yet not a single one of them is ever able to win a single state or any degree of the vote that would actually make them a challenging competitor. And Scott is going to be the exact same thing, because not only is he just being basically, because they have this part in the article about people, other Senate Republicans were trying to convince him to run. The theory I have for that, because I said before, this primary is really interesting in the sense that people who want to be president, like Rand Paul, Rubio, Cruz, they're sitting out of this because they know that it's the Trump party. He's going to have at least one more try at trying to get a second term, and then maybe he'll get thrown in jail or indicted, or just not win, or something's going to happen to where they think probably by 2028 they can finally run again. So when you're looking at someone like Scott, a lot of this is my theory. A lot of those Republican senators that tell him to run maybe would rather have him than Trump, because they are trying to move past him, but they don't want to risk any of the actual people who are truly ambitious from running, from like running against Trump and then being saddled with the with the, like going against dear leader in a later presidential election. Like, hey, you're the person that ran against Trump and you thought you could beat. So they don't want that to happen to someone else that is more has a higher chance of actually winning the primary. But yeah, he's not going to win because, again, there's too much Trump support. Even in his own state, Trump has almost 45% of the votes, like 42%, 41 rather, to his 7. I don't believe at this point that Republican primary voters will make an African American their nominee. I'd like to be wrong about that, but history has shown that they're not exactly the most accommodating of minority candidates. Maybe that'll change in 20 years, 50 years, but right now that's not happening. But also, he's someone who, again, because he doesn't stand out from a position standpoint, he has to talk about his background and his character, and that's one of the biggest things I hate about American politics, that people treat political figures like celebrities. Like, what kind of music do you listen to? Can you tell us about where you grew up? It doesn't matter if the person's positions align with yours, or if they are saying something that you agree with. That should be the main part, and I think that is, for a majority of voters, the main thing that they get excited over. It's just that a lot of these pundits and politicians are so self-centered that they think people want to hear about their personal story. But yeah, he's gonna probably get maybe like 2-3% of the vote, then lose, drop out probably before South Carolina, because I don't think he wants the embarrassment of losing his own state. He'll be in the U.S. Senate for probably another few years, because he said he's not going to run for another term. And then I guess after that he'll get a job as a lobbyist or have some other speaking fee type engagement to keep himself afloat. It's funny, South Carolina, in the span of 3 presidential elections, is going to produce 3 failed candidates for president. It's going to have, because remember, Graham ran in 2016 and got nothing. Haley is running right now and she's going to get nothing. And Scott is appearing to being very close to entering the race, and he's definitely getting nothing. So we're gonna just keep having these. I feel so bad for that state because, like I've said before, I have family that stays there, that was raised there. But it's just kind of sad that this state that I do hold, I'd say more than probably any other southern state besides Mississippi, the closest to my heart, keeps making like these right wingers who they elect at some overwhelming margin, but in actuality have no chance of not even, like, forget winning a general election, they can't even make it out of the primary. And it's like they don't even have a respectable run. Like, hey, this person, they didn't win, but they won like 3 states, 5 states. They can't even win their own state. So this is just another one of these people that, referring to Scott, that stands for nothing, is not going to win anything, and it's going to be real fun to watch. him think he has a chance. Hilarious.